The fluorescent lights of Mercy General Hospital buzzed overhead as I sat in the waiting room, my hands trembling slightly as they rested on my still flat stomach. 6 weeks pregnant. The words still felt surreal, like they belonged to someone else's life. My husband, Derek Morrison, sat beside me scrolling through his phone, his jaw tight with that familiar tension that had become our normal over the past year. We had been married for 3 years. 3 years that started with champagne toasts at our wedding in the Hamptons and had slowly devolved into silent dinners and separate bedrooms. Derek was a successful investment banker in Manhattan, the kind of man who wore $1,000 suits and spoke in clipped sentences. When we met, I thought his intensity was passion. Now I knew it was control. The pregnancy was unplanned. When I told Derek 2 weeks ago, his face had gone blank for a long moment before he smiled. But it wasn't the smile I remembered from our early days. It was calculated, measured. He pulled me into a hug and whispered against my hair that this was exactly what we needed to fix things. The way he said it made my skin crawl, though I couldn't explain why. A nurse called my name, Sarah Chen, according to her badge. She had kind eyes and a gentle smile as she led us down the hallway. The examination room smelled like antiseptic and something floral from a wall plug-in. I changed into the paper gown while Derek waited outside, then climbed onto the table. Dr. Patricia Rawlings entered moments later. She was in her late 50s with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a practical bun. She had delivered hundreds of babies in this Boston suburb and had a reputation for being thorough and direct. She greeted Derek with a professional nod and turned to me with warmer eyes. The ultrasound began routinely enough. Dr. Rawlings squeezed the cold gel onto my abdomen and pressed the transducer against my skin. The monitor flickered to life with grainy black and white images. I could hear the rapid flutter of a heartbeat, impossibly fast and fragile. "There's the baby," Dr. Rawlings said, pointing to a small blob on the screen. "Everything looks good so far. Let me just take a few measurements." Derek leaned forward, his hand finding mine. His palm was sweaty. I watched his face as he stared at the monitor, and something in his expression made my chest tighten. He looked almost triumphant. Dr. Rawlings moved the wand slowly, clicking buttons and studying the screen with increasing focus. Her brow furrowed slightly. She was quiet for longer than seemed normal. The only sound was the whooshing of the heartbeat and the rhythmic beeping of the machine. "Everything okay?" I asked, my voice smaller than I intended. "Let me just check something," she said without looking away from the monitor. She moved the transducer to different positions, pressing harder, angling it carefully. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Then she glanced at Derek, and something passed across her face. Something that looked like recognition or maybe suspicion. "Mr. Morrison, would you mind stepping out for just a moment?" Dr. Rawlings asked suddenly. "I need to do a quick internal exam, and some patients prefer privacy for that portion." Derek's hand tightened on mine. "I'm fine staying," he said firmly. "I really do insist," Dr. Rawlings replied, her voice taking on an edge I hadn't heard before. "It's hospital policy for this particular procedure. You can wait right outside. It will only be a few minutes." The air in the room changed. Derek's jaw clenched and he stared at Dr. Rawlings for a long moment before standing abruptly. "Fine," he said. "I'll be right outside." The door clicked shut behind him. Dr. Rawlings immediately locked it. The sound of the deadbolt sliding into place seemed impossibly loud. She turned to me and her entire demeanor had shifted. The professional warmth was gone, replaced by an intensity that made my heart race. She moved closer to the examination table, her eyes locked on mine. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper, urgent and frightened in a way that sent ice through my veins. "Listen to me very carefully," she said. "I need you to stay calm, but what I'm about to tell you could save your life. The ultrasound is fine. The baby is healthy, but I recognized your husband the moment he walked in." My breath caught. "What?" Dr. Rawlings glanced at the locked door, then back at me. Her hands were shaking slightly. 6 years ago, I treated a woman in the ER. Her name was Michelle. She was 28 years old, pregnant, and she came in with injuries she said were from a fall. But I knew better. I always know better. My mouth went dry. "What are you saying?" Dr. Rawlings moved even closer, her voice dropping to an urgent whisper. Michelle was married to Derek Morrison. You're Derek. She had bruises on her arms that matched fingerprints, old fractures that had healed incorrectly, and she was terrified. I begged her to file a report, to leave him. She promised me she would. The room tilted. I gripped the edges of the examination table, the paper crinkling beneath my fingers. That's impossible. Derek never mentioned being married before. Because Michelle died 3 months after I saw her, Dr. Rawlings said, and each word landed like a physical blow. She fell down the stairs in their home. 8 months pregnant. She and the baby both died. The police investigated it as an accident. Derek inherited everything, sold the house in Connecticut, and disappeared. Until today. No, the word came out strangled. You're mistaken. You have to be mistaken. Dr. Rawlings pulled out her phone with shaking hands, quickly navigating to a news article. She held it up to my face. The headline read, "Tragic accident claims life of pregnant woman and unborn child." Below it was a photo of a woman with dark hair and a bright smile, standing next to Derek. He looked younger, but it was unmistakably him. Couldn't breathe. The walls of the examination room seemed to close in. All those times Derek insisted I quit my job as a teacher. How he convinced me to move away from my family in Seattle to Boston where he had connections. The way he handled all our finances, insisting I didn't need access to the accounts because he took care of everything. How he'd slowly isolated me from my friends, always with reasonable explanations that made me feel guilty for questioning him. The bruise on my wrist from last week when he grabbed me too hard during an argument. I had convinced myself it was an accident, that I was being dramatic. Dr. Rawlings gripped my arm gently. Listen to me. I don't know what his plan is, but you are in danger. Michelle told me things in that ER room. She said Derek became obsessed with having an heir, with creating the perfect family. When she tried to leave, he told her she would never take his child away from him. She was planning to escape the week she died. Tears streamed down my face. What do I do? A sharp knock on the door made us both jump. Derek's voice came through, tense and irritated. Is everything all right in there? This is taking a while. Dr. Rawlings straightened immediately, her professional mask sliding back into place. Just finishing up, Mr. Morrison, she called out. Then she leaned close to my ear. Smile. Act normal. Meet me in the parking garage in exactly 1 hour. Dr. Rawlings unlocked the door and Derek stepped back inside, his eyes immediately scanning the room, assessing. His gaze moved from me to the doctor, searching for something out of place. I forced myself to breathe normally, to arrange my face into something neutral despite the terror screaming through every nerve. Everything looks perfect, Dr. Rawlings said smoothly, her voice betraying none of the urgency from moments before. Healthy heartbeat, good measurements. I'll print out some ultrasound photos for you both. Derek's shoulders relaxed slightly. When can we know the gender? Around 18 to 20 weeks. We'll schedule your next appointment on the way out. I cleaned the gel off my stomach with trembling hands, willing them to steady. Derek helped me sit up, his touch gentle, almost tender. To anyone watching, he looked like a devoted husband. But now I saw it differently. The way his fingers lingered on my arm, the possessiveness in his smile, how his body positioned itself between me and the door. We walked to the reception desk where a young woman with bright red hair scheduled my next appointment. Derek's hand rested on the small of my back, a gesture that once felt protective, but now felt like a cage. He collected the ultrasound photos, studying them with an expression I couldn't read. In the elevator down to the parking garage, he pulled me close. We're going to be a family, he murmured against my hair. Everything is going to be perfect now. My phone buzzed in my purse. Derek's eyes flicked down. Who's texting you? Probably just my mom. She's been checking in a lot since I told her about the baby. His jaw tightened. You know how I feel about you sharing our private business with your family. She's my mother, Derek. She's excited. We'll discuss it at home, he said. And those 5 words carried a weight that made my stomach drop. We reached his Mercedes. He opened my door, ever the gentleman, and I slid inside. My mind raced. 1 hour. I had to find a way to get back here in 1 hour without Derek knowing. But how? He monitored everything. My location, my calls, my spending. He always knew where I was. As he drove through Boston traffic, I stared out the window at people living normal lives. A woman jogging with her dog. A father pushing a stroller. A couple laughing outside a coffee shop. Had Michelle looked out windows like this, watching freedom she couldn't reach? If you're rooting for me to find a way out, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. What happens next is going to change everything. Derek's phone rang through the car speakers. His business partner. He answered curtly, launching into a conversation about quarterly reports and investment portfolios. His attention shifted completely to the call, and for the first time in the 20-minute drive home, he wasn't watching me. That's when I saw it. A police car parked at a red light beside us. My hand moved to the door handle. Every instinct screamed at me to throw it open, to run to that police car and scream for help. But Derek's words from last month echoed in my head. I have friends in the police department. Sweetheart. Good friends. If you ever embarrass me publicly, you'll regret it. The light turned green. The police car turned left. The moment vanished. We pulled into the driveway of our colonial-style house in Brookline. Derek had bought it 6 months ago, insisting we needed more space for our future family. Now I wondered if Michelle had walked these same halls. If she had died on these stairs. I need to lie down, I said as we entered. The morning sickness. Derek nodded, distracted by his phone. I have a conference call in 10 minutes anyway. Rest. I'll check on you later. I went upstairs to our bedroom and closed the door. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone. 45 minutes until I was supposed to meet Dr. Rawlings. I opened my messages and saw texts from my mom, my sister Rachel, my best friend from college. All people Derek had systematically convinced me to distance myself from. I typed a message to Rachel. If something happens to me, Derek did it. Then I deleted it. Too dramatic. Too soon. What if I was wrong? What if Dr. Rawlings had made a mistake? But deep down, I knew she hadn't. I heard Derek's voice downstairs, confident and commanding as he talked business. I moved to the closet and pulled out an overnight bag, stuffing it with clothes, my passport, some cash I had hidden in an old shoebox, my emergency fund that Derek didn't know about, $3,000 saved from birthday money and small gifts over the years. Then I heard his footsteps on the stairs. I shoved the bag into the back of the closet and threw myself onto the bed just as the door opened. Derek stood in the doorframe, his tie loosened, studying me with those calculating eyes. You seem anxious, he observed. Just tired. The pregnancy. He moved closer, sitting on the edge of the bed. His hand rested on my stomach, and revulsion rolled through me. I thought we could have dinner at Harvest tonight. Celebrate the Ultrasound. Your favorite restaurant. It was a test. Harvest was downtown, nowhere near the hospital. He was making sure I stayed close, stayed controlled. That sounds lovely, I forced myself to say. He leaned down and kissed my forehead, a gesture that would have seemed sweet to anyone watching. Good. I made reservations for 7. Wear that blue dress I bought you. After he left, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. I had 30 minutes now. 30 minutes to decide if I was brave enough to risk everything on the word of a doctor I barely knew, or stay in a marriage that might kill me. I waited until I heard Derek's office door close downstairs, the sound of his voice resuming the conference call. Then I moved quickly. I grabbed the overnight bag from the closet, my phone, and the ultrasound photos. Evidence. Everything was evidence now. The stairs creaked under my feet and I froze, heart hammering. Derek's voice continued uninterrupted from behind his office door. I slipped out the front door, closing it silently behind me. I didn't have a car. Derek had sold mine 6 months ago, saying we only needed one vehicle since I wasn't working. I walked 3 blocks to the main road and called an Uber with shaking hands. The driver, an older man with kind eyes, asked if I was okay. I lied and said I was fine. The hospital parking garage was nearly empty when I arrived. Dr. Rawlings stood beside a silver Toyota, her medical bag in hand. When she saw me, relief flooded her face. Thank God. She breathed. I wasn't sure you'd come. She gestured for me to get in her car. Once inside, she handed me a folder. I've been carrying this for 6 years, waiting. Police reports from Michelle's case that were never followed up on. Medical records showing a pattern of injuries. Text messages she sent me the week before she died, saying she was afraid. I flipped through the documents, each page confirming my worst fears. Michelle had tried to leave twice. Both times, Derek had found her and convinced her to come back. The final text read, "He said if I take his baby, neither of us will survive." I believe him. Dr. Rawlings drove while she talked. I have a colleague, Dr. Sarah Bennett. She runs a women's shelter in Vermont, completely off the grid. She's expecting you. You'll be safe there until we can build a case. What about the police? Her hands tightened on the steering wheel. I tried with Michelle. Derek's family has connections. Old money, political influence. The investigation into her death was closed in 48 hours. But things are different now. You're alive. You can testify. And I have a friend in the DA's office who owes me a favor. We drove for an hour, stopping at a rest area where a woman in her 40s waited beside a blue Honda. Dr. Bennett. She embraced me like I was already saved. And maybe I was. Before I got in her car, Dr. Rawlings grabbed my hand. You're stronger than Michelle was able to be. You got out in time. Your baby will grow up knowing their mother was brave enough to choose life. Tears streamed down my face. What if he finds me? He won't. And even if he tries, he'll have to go through me, the entire shelter network, and the legal system. You're not alone anymore. As we pulled away, I looked back at Dr. Rawlings standing in that parking lot. A guardian angel in a white coat who had saved 2 lives with a whispered warning. 2 years later, I stood in the kitchen of a small farmhouse in rural Vermont, sunlight streaming through lace curtains. My daughter, Emma, sat in her high chair, her dark curls bouncing as she laughed at the oatmeal she was enthusiastically smearing across her tray. She had my eyes and, thankfully, none of Derek's coldness. The shelter had been my home for 8 months. Dr. Bennett and her team had helped me rebuild everything Derek had systematically destroyed. My confidence, my independence, my sense of self. They connected me with a lawyer who specialized in domestic violence cases, a therapist who understood trauma, and eventually, a job teaching at a small elementary school in town. Derek had been arrested 4 months after I disappeared. Dr. Rawlings's friend in the DA's office had reopened Michelle's case, and combined with my testimony, the medical records, and evidence of financial control and intimidation, they built a case that even his family's lawyers couldn't dismantle. He was currently serving 15 years for manslaughter in Michelle's death, with additional charges for coercive control, financial abuse, and endangerment. The trial had been brutal. His lawyers painted me as unstable, vindictive, a liar who wanted his money. But Dr. Rawlings sat in that courtroom every single day, a steady presence that reminded me why I had been brave enough to run. When the guilty verdict came through, I collapsed in the hallway outside, sobbing with relief I didn't know a body could contain. My phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Rachel, my sister. Still coming for Emma's birthday next weekend? Mom is already baking enough cake to feed the entire state. I smiled and typed back. Wouldn't miss it. Tell Mom to save me some frosting. I had reconnected with my family 6 months ago, after the trial ended. They had been searching for me, terrified, after Derek reported me missing and played the devastated husband perfectly. The lies he told them about my supposed mental health crisis, the fake concern. But they believed me when I finally called. They always had. Emma threw a piece of banana and it landed in my hair. I laughed, pulling it out and tickling her belly. She squealed with delight. This perfect little human who would grow up knowing she was wanted, protected, and free. Sometimes I still had nightmares. Sometimes I woke up certain Derek was standing in my doorway. But those moments grew further apart. Healing wasn't linear, my therapist reminded me. It was messy and complicated, and sometimes you took steps backward. But I was healing, and I was alive. Thank you so much for staying with me until the end of this story. If it touched your heart or made you think, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment below telling me what kind of stories you'd like to see next. Your support means everything, and it helps me keep sharing stories that matter. Until next time, remember that it's never too late to choose yourself.